Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back after a short break. I, Rucha,
And I, Gunjit.
students of PGDM at National Insurance Academy, are your host for the next round of panel discussion. In this round, we'll be exploring the theme Future of Work and will take a fresh look at its various dimensions. The discussion will be focused around the trends affecting workplaces and workforces, the role of HR in the future work, and how can organization factor diversity, equity, and inclusion in the future.
Dr. Tarun Agrawal, Director of the National Insurance Academy, will moderate the panel discussion. He has already been introduced during the inauguration, and with his guidance, the conversation is said to be enlightening and thought provoking.
The experts in the panel are Ms. Ruchira Bharadwaj, Chief Human Resources Officer at Kotak Life Insurance Company Limited, Mr. Saurabh Sham, Head Human Resources and Learning and Development at SBI General Insurance, Mr. Sriram Narsihan, Senior Vice President at Intellect Design Arena Limited, Mr. Vasudev Kandalwadi, Head of Delivery Private Sector and GDC at Evident. Now, I request the esteemed experts to kindly come forward and form the dais.
Meanwhile, let me take this opportunity to introduce them. Ms. Ruchira Bharadwaj holds the esteemed position of Chief Human Resource Officer at Kotak Life Insurance. With a remarkable tenure exceeding 25 years, she boasts an impressive background in pivotal HR roles at organizations of repute. An alum of IRMA and NMIMS, she is also a Global Fellow Talent Manager from the Wharton School.
Mr. Saurabh Sham is the Head of Human Resources and Learning and Development at SBI General Insurance. With a wealth of experience surpassing 15 years, he brings profound insights in HR, employment relations, and team leaderships.
Mr. Sriram Narsimhan is the Senior Vice President at Intellect Design Arena Limited. A seasoned professional, he has an incredible career of over 25 years, steering talent and business operations for Intellect AI. Prior to this, he was the first HR head of AIG System Solutions and played a pivotal role in establishing AIG's ODCs in India.
Mr. Vasudev Kandalwadi is the Head of Delivery Private Sector and GDCs at Evident. With 27 years of extensive experience, he has taken up several leadership roles across the company. He is an alum of IIM Bangalore and currently pursuing leadership and strategy program with HEC Paris.
Now, I request my colleagues to formally welcome the guest.
May I now request the moderator, Dr. Tarun Agrawal, to commence the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, panelists, for taking out time. I'm humbled, and NIA welcomes you, and thank you for being here. We have such a great panel, Vasudev, Sriram, Saurabh, and Ruchira. So let me make it clear that I am sitting as one of the student, and I'm moderating this panel on behalf of you students. So wherever there are any questions, please keep them ready and park them with you. I think we'll give you quite a lot of time today because the topic is future of work, and that's where it is more relevant to you. And as I begin, let me just read a small few lines from a Hindi poem which says that मदद करूँगा दूसरों को बढ़ने में भी, सबको साथ लेकर चलता हूँ, मैं वक्त हूँ ये इंसानों, हमेशा बदलता रहता हूँ. So time will keep on changing and the future of work will continue to change. So I think we need to keep pace with the time, and that's something very, very important. And let me also thank my fellow panelists before this panel, where we had beautiful discussions and many provoking thoughts came in. And I personally gained a lot, took a notes of what it was discussed. So let me begin formally by taking up a question which is, I'm sure would be one of the favorite ones. 5 years down the line, how the work will be performed. So today itself, the lines between work from home and the place of work is kind of blurring. So I thought, let me ask, how would it look like 5 years ahead of this time? So I would request Vasudev to initiate and let us know his views on this.
Can you hear me? So first of all, I see a lot of mobile phones, pictures, right? That's the future of work, and that's the future generation we have. So why don't you guys give yourselves, the future, a big round of applause? See, we talk about future of work, and we have been talking about it, since time eternity, right? I remember my first day at job, and we used to talk about, well, what is the future? And I come from Generation X, by the way. You Generation Zs, yeah? So I was also hip at one point in time, right? So when we started, and when I started my career as a Java developer in the IT landscape, the buzzword was digital transformation, right? It still is. The nature of transformation is what has changed, right? And therefore, the manner in which the transformation has changed is redefining the future of work itself. Now, when we say future of work, to me, there are 2 or 3 components, right? The work itself, which means roles, which means titles, designations, which means many of you would already be thinking about it, opportunities, right? Will I be traveling to US in 1 year time? Will I be traveling? And basically it revolves around experience that you expect of work, right? The second attribute is the workplace itself. And Dr. Tarun rightly pointed out, the workplace has been turned upside down, and our old myths has been shattered, right, to the pandemic, right? What we saw and what we thought was once impossible, is a new way of life in workplace, right? And the third is the content of the work, right? What will be seen as valuable, right? So I think all these 3 things is going to undergo certain level of changes. Will it be transformational? Yes and no, because if you have the skills that is relevant to the workplace, and if you deliver a content that will mean something to the business transformation at that point in time, you will still be enjoying work life, and that will be the definition of future of work. But if we enter into the workplace trying to think and box ourselves into a certain set of activities that we are used to do, then we'll very much become irrelevant. So to me, Dr. Tarun, when we say future of work and image of work, hybrid workplace, obviously that's going to be there. We are all experimenting right now, right? 3 days a week, 2 days a week, flexible. Return to work for many colleagues who have had break in their careers. That's a great opportunity. So multiple dimensions that will undergo change, right, in terms of composition of how workplace will look like in the future. The content of work, designations and titles will be demolished in the future. You can't live by your titles. right, and feel great about it. Because in my era, if I got promoted from a developer to a lead, that used to give me a kick. Yeah, I'm a big guy, right? Now, some of those things will change, and the relevance will depend upon you, and learning will become a constant. If you're a learner, you will be relevant, and I think that will what will define us.
Thank you, Vasudev. Very, very nice comments there. Maybe if I may invite Ruchira, your thoughts on this, please.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's always great to be back in this beautiful campus and amidst the youngsters. So the future of work will maybe look like Chat GPT version 55.5.4. It might look like you serenading an AI partner in the office, romancing an AI partner in the office if you want to. It might look like that you are in a digital cocoon, and especially with the new Data Privacy Act, which is now enforced, that you are on your own and you own your data because you can't do anything with anybody else's data. So, and those are the realities, I think, which are not just future of work 5 years down the line, but might be very soon. But jokes apart, I think everything that Vasudev mentioned is going to happen. Two things I would want to add. I think the future of work will be very collaborative. It will be a boundaryless universe, maybe moon also now, where you can work and you can collaborate with people across. And hence the openness with which the work is going to happen, openness of ideas, openness to anywhere that you would want to contribute, to any kind of team that you would want to contribute, or any type of work that you would want to be part of or learn. I think that is going to be defining what the future is going to hold. So boundaryless and very collaborative is what my prediction is going to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruchira. Excellent comments. Really a great learning. Sriram?
Yeah, sure. So good afternoon, and so it's always amazing to be here. I've been coming here for like 10 years. That's the kind of association that I have, and every year I'm like, really taken back by the knowledge level, the kind of things that you guys do, and I'm privileged to be here today. Thank you for having me here. So, so the way I see or envision the future is very simple, right? We're going to have, I'm sure all of you realize the fact that we are moving away from a very generalist, I can also do, it is process or development, right? From being a user community, we're all becoming creators. That's a fundamental shift in the very basic, at a very basic level. So we have slowly migrated from being followers, taking instructions, to now telling the world what can be done next in your respective fields, right? So I see a transformational change there. So basically, I come from an organization that develops smart products. That's how we started. Today, we talk about hyper automation, decision, intelligence and automation for PNC world for the Americans, right? So that's how we have migrated from a simple claims platform to building a completely intelligent tool and product for the PNC America, designed from India. That's happened in the last 6-7 years. The way this is going to progress, I clearly see there are going to be like 3 sets of, I would rather say the boundary of doing, having told and doing something, to the ability of imagining, what is not said, trying to kind of be able to think beyond the boundaries, envision a future for yourself. That's the kind of freedom that people will have, right? You will set your own boundaries, right? We are going to talk more to models and missions, right? We are going to move the decision-making opportunities to the fingertips of the end users. That's the kind of responsibility that we are going to have, not just as an industry, as a nation, because that's the power of the youth, and that's the way the world is moving. So there's going to be a transformational shift, right? And of course, how you want to do it is going to be your choice. Whether I do a hybrid, whether I, would love to work from home. Those are, elements that you can choose. But eventually, we're going to become one of the most knowledge-based, countries in the world. And this is going to transform the world in a much, much, highly impactful way than what you and I see today. So that's to keep it short. We'll kind of probably discuss about this.
Thanks, Sriram. Saurabh, any comments on the future of work, how it will be?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Tarun, and thank you, the NI team, for inviting me for this and giving me an opportunity to speak to all of you. Now, I have two answers to this, Dr. Tarun, and the first one, which is the shorter one, is I've got no clue what the future of work would be. But then this question provokes you, and you start thinking as to what it could be. Normal tendency is that, we start looking at every question about the future we ask, and the normal tendency is we start looking at the developed nations, the Western economies, and say, let's draw some answers from there. But I don't think the India of today is that India where you can say that whatever is happening in West is going to happen with us. So I look at this question in two different ways, and there are two dimensions to this. One is whether the work itself will change. In my view, the work will remain more or less the same. It's the way we do that work and what we perceive to be as work, which is going to be different. In our times, probably, the way we were looking at when we get placed, join a company, what kind of work we're going to do is different than what today people are thinking of when they come into the organization. The priorities are different. I look at work as a means to live my life. Some generations probably looked at work as the life, right? So I think these are two different things. We probably would be more interested in what kind of work and to what extent will be involved in that work. These are the questions probably for the future that I foresee.
Thank you, Saurabh. Interesting. So let me just move on to the next interesting piece, whereby, while I was preparing to be the moderator for this panel, I was reading that in next not more than 4 years, 75% of the global workforce will be millennials. And the corporate cultures of most large organizations will be directly shaped by these generations, by their habits and expectations, providing an environment where people will feel valued, independent, and part of a team will be more important than ever. So keeping that in mind, my question would be, how Gen Z is likely to impact the future of work and how the companies are preparing themselves. So Sriram, may I invite your comments, please?
Sure. I mean, I honestly, I don't think anybody can have a straight answer to that. We can probably start visualizing some of these things, right? The very engagement of Gen Z, it's not going to be very significantly different from what's happening to Gen X. When I started my career, engagement was, celebrating a birthday and having an office party. And then, we moved on. And I still get some of the response when I interview candidates for HR job, and really puts me off. But, because that's not what we, want to do as an engagement, right? So engagement eventually also means how do you kind of connect to the intellectual capability of an individual and excite that individual to continue fully charged and contribute to the organization, right? That's very simple, an explanation of engagement. Now, how you do it is very different. For example, I'm going to quote, because I spent about 13 years in this organization, right? We were a services organization, then we became a product organization, then we became a platform organization. So, so the T-shirt that I'm wearing today, right? So I didn't wear it for a purpose, but it just so happened. What we have found is many of the ideas that are there need not necessarily come in from my business users or from the sales guys or from the product management guys, right? And it necessarily need not be from the same domain as well. So everybody has a view, everybody has a perception, everybody has a thought. The best way to engage is to see if we can collectively have events to promote, ask people to come share. Now, we started doing this where you're curious had kind of a basic initiative. I ask question, why am I doing what I'm doing? It started as simple as that. And we promoted this culture of questioning. From questioning came curiosity. From curiosity came the challenges. Then we said, okay, why not this way? The more we gave opportunity for people to make this as an inclusive process, we found there was a lot more value addition to the entire organization, right? So these innovation challenges, for example, nobody drives it, the team drives it. And today we find the innovation challenges ideas are basically from people who've just completed the college, either the PGs, UGs, whatever it is, but people who are really looking forward to kind of make a difference to this world. And ideas necessarily, like I said, need not be on the same lines of business, but then how can you kind of convert them? That's a different conversation. But keeping them excited, giving them opportunities to participate, hearing them out, valuing and appreciating their thought process. I think that's going to continue for any, either it's Gen Z or whatever it is. I think that's going to send a very strong signal that we are building an organization together. That togetherness, which is the inclusive process, is going to be very detrimental factor for us to kind of decide how we want to engage and how do we grow.
Thanks, Shriram. Interesting. May I request Saurabh to please pitch in and add if there is something which comes to your mind.
Sure. So in addition to what Sriram has said, I think when we talk about Gen Z, they are absolutely clear as to what they want. I think it's us who are the previous generations who need to understand what they want. So in our times, again, we're just comparing generations here. So I'll say our times. Don't consider this to be as I'm someone who's very old. But so in our times, I think the question was essential. Kapda, roti, makan. This was also the reflection of the movies that were being made at that time. I think Gen Z does not think of all those aspects, and it is to do with the development that the country has seen, the kind of economic growth that we have witnessed. And those essential questions of existence are no more a problem. We are moved beyond that. We can take credit of that, but this generation probably does not feel that those are the problems that they face. What is it that they want to do, in my opinion? And again, something I'm very clueless about. The more I speak to you, the more confused I get. But what I think is you want to make it big, and you want to make it big quick, is what probably I'm looking. You guys are willing to take chance. And this is not something which was an easy option for previous generation. We wanted stability and security. You guys want fame and name. And that too in a very short span of time, which is nothing wrong. I think that is the way to go, because you generally grow to the next level in the hierarchy. And your level of hierarchy is that. So I think when we are looking at Gen Z, one change that as an organization, as an industry that we are also witnessing is that earlier people used to prepare for a job to join an organization. Now the organizations are preparing for these people to come up and take the opportunities with us. And this is something which is very different. Organizations also realize that if you want to take the risk, you want to play big, this is the field for you, go ahead and take your chances.
Yeah, very well said, Saurabh. I echo with you, definitely. Yes, Roti Kapda Makan was, one of the priorities, and I also see, this generation is, kind of they just don't want to own anything, which is also exciting, right? So I see many there's a new generation which is, sitting in front of us and maybe 2 years ahead of them as well. So they just, take a flat on rent, they hire sofas, they believe in Zomatos and Swiggy. So I think that's something also exciting trends which I am watching. So going ahead, Ruchira, keeping this piece in line, so what will be your comments if I were to say, like, instead of hiring employees with, journalist skills to be physically and permanently located in a central office, the growing trend is to form dynamic teams based upon task-oriented skills, and for those teams to work within a much less centralized and hierarchical structures. So my question would be, what will be the role of HR in the future of work then?
Thank you. Before I go into role of HR, let me add my 2 bits on the Gen Z. So I have a very 180-degree point of view on categorizing or bucketing people in by when they have been born. I remember when I was a 22-year-old, and believe you me, I used to be like you, right? Very difficult to imagine, right? When you say only thing that was not available at that point of time was tech. But I used to be as curious as all of you today. I used to make my parents' life miserable, my faculty's life miserable, and used to take a lot of fun because I used to be like that. So I don't see that you are any different from me when I was 22-year-old. So that is one. And as digital natives, Doctor, I think today's generations are pushing us to do more and better. So I'll come to the HR part later and how you are driving us to do things, the same thing. HR continues to do the same thing. We are trying to reinvent ourselves, but we continue to do the same thing. So you have taken the bull by the horn and you have made us to allow you to work from anywhere, right? And because of the generation, today's generation and today's youngsters, we are changing and we are saying, yes, we can also work from anywhere. We can also do our work through MS Teams, through Zoom, through Slack. You are also making us more purposeful. Earlier, when I was as an employee, when I joined the organization, the purpose of me was always what is the purpose of the organization. Now you are driving us to think what is really your purpose and what is the kind of purpose you want to drive. And more I see you are becoming more environmental conscious, you are more diversity conscious, you are bias free, you are global citizens. And so that's how you are changing us. So as HR, we have to, my job becomes extremely difficult, me and my time, my fraternity's job become very difficult to prepare people who have not gone through this kind of purpose-driven, environment-driven, non-bias-driven environment to thrive together. Another added piece which has come in is technology and AI. So HR earlier was making people, warring people come together and form a truce. Now we have to get the employee and the holographic version of another employee to come to a truce saying, who has spilled virtual coffee on my digital platform? So those kind of questions might come up. But jokes apart, the job is going to be similar, but with a little twist. So earlier also we were wanting to hire people. Now we have to see, we hire people and see how do they come to office. So that's the challenge. So the difference is how do we make them come to the brick and mortar system and have a physical interaction. And once they come, earlier the job was saying, okay, now we do performance management, we do talent management, we see you have a career. Now we have to see that the person wants to build a career with you, doesn't want to go outside every 6 months down the line, right? So that's the second thing. And the third piece is if you stay, the generation continues to stay with the organization, how to be your internal therapist so that you are happy and thriving and all your challenges that your holographic version somewhere is making life miserable for you. So we are learning, we are evolving, and it's going to be a challenge. I'm hoping that all of you are going to support us when you join us.
Thank you, Ruchira. Interesting insights. So Vasudev, may I invite your comments on the same piece? What will be the role of HR in the future of work?
So I think, when we talk of multiple generations at work, right, this is probably a point in time where we have many generations all at the same time, right? And given where we are, right, in terms of the business transformation needs, my take is it could be a win-win for all the generations. The thing that you guys offer, right, the Gen Zs offer, is advantage with tech, the ease of tech, but at the same time, the disadvantage that you guys have is, over information. Information, bursting at you, and you don't know what to do with that information, right? So I think what the other generations in the workplace can offer and what they have gone through is their ability to manage disruption of business and sail through difficult times, because that comes only by experiencing it, right? And if we can combine both, given that we have AI and all of it disrupting the business, we can have multiple generations learning from each other, right? You can lean on the previous generations for that well-being, ability to cope with stress, coming up with solutions to problems rather than admiring problems, right? So I think those are the things that the other generations will have to offer you. At the same time, what you can offer is disruptive ideas to the table, risk-taking ability, which others in the office may be very afraid to take. And most important, given your education here and, given the, positive spirit in our country, I think reimagining the business processes is something that you guys can do better than many people in the current workplace who have worked with the same processes. So because when Generation X started working, disruption transformation meant you make incremental changes and improvements to processes, which means you had systems, you had way of work, and you had set processes. What we did over the years was change some of that, make some incremental improvements, and we were able to live up with that. Some of the improvements were great, maybe breakthroughs, but now we are at a stage where the boundaries between industries itself is kind of thinning, and you have the opportunity to reimagine the whole processes and business workflows. So I think it will be a good mix where we don't necessarily think that it's going to be a clash of generations and all of that. And the experience that this generation will have is going to be that much more enriching. Simple example, right? When I started my career as a developer, it took me probably a year before I was allowed to talk to my client. There was always an intermediary, the so-called project lead. When you enter the industry, you have all the capabilities and skills to do that, provided you don't mess it up in the first meeting, right? So I think that is the kind of change and the opportunities that generation has. So to me, it's a win-win situation. Yes, this whole return to office, hybrid, work from home is stabilizing, right? We imagining that everybody will work from home, everybody will be virtual is going to be a myth according to me. The Silicon Valley happened for a reason. And there is research that suggests that when bright minds meet together, it really results in development of new ideas in a very, very accelerated fashion. And that's how, real game-changing events happen. So that force will always be there. So the urge, you being in this, institute, why are you here? It's because you get to meet people of the similar or even more intellectual capabilities. The real value is interactions with like-minded people, right? And that value, that human experience will never go away. So the value of workplace, people coming together, its relevance will always be there. What would perhaps change is the well-being part of it, right? Because people would want to have that balance out. People would not want to miss out on their vacation. People would not want to miss out on their personal milestones. And that would be the demand of the generation. And I think that's where the workplace will need to adjust itself.
Yeah, thanks, Vasudev. If I may just sum up, I think the kind of experience which generation like us have it, and people on the stage we have, what I typically call it as a juice of life, and that's where Vasudev is saying that that's the juice of life, or the experience which all of us have here, and your faculties and the other eminent panelists and guests we have here. That's the kind of we are trying to put that juice, pour in your glasses, so that you don't commit those mistakes which Vasudev is mentioning at the day one when you join the respective organizations. So moving on, Sriram, I have a question for you. Now that we have looked at generational Z, and how will the work look like 5 years, and what will be the HR role. I believe, I think it's time that we also raise a question as to how will organization factor the diversity, equity, and inclusiveness in the future of work. Sriram.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's a very relevant question, but again, this is already happening, at least with a lot of progressive or organizations that want to have a progressive outlook, right? Organizations that have global outlook actually don't have a choice. If you got to survive, you got to be as diverse and as inclusive as possible. Now, diversity, again, a lot of people think diversity is this gender thing, and trying to accommodate, show off as a socially responsible kind of an organization because there's somebody who's challenged or whatever. But it's beyond that. The very idea of diversity here is to ensure that you get different perspectives. Your market space is much wider and larger, and therefore it opens up a very wide spectrum for us. And if you have to optimize everything that you do, it has to cater to various segments. There are some feel good, there are social responsible, which is always there. For example, right, if you look at India, now I actually ran this presentation to one of my largest customer who came from the Europe. So today, every customer in their RFP process they have a question on diversity and inclusion. And you can have a very stock standard response to them, but here is this classic example. First and foremost is for us to recognize there is no other country in the world which is as diverse as we are, right? If you look at your organization, your university, there's people sitting here, you're from north, south, east, west, you have various languages, you have various, belief systems, food, dressing, way of looking at things. Now, getting all of this as a collective intelligence towards a common purpose by itself is a massive success. We've got to start believing in what we're doing, right? And then moving on from there, if you're looking at global outlook, then how do you now start looking and engaging? There are gone are the days when we used to look to the West and say, those guys lead, we follow. No, we lead, we are happy to be led, but we also lead, right? So you get yourself up to that level. Now, how can these things happen? When you start challenging status quo, when you start believing in yourself, and ensuring that you take the entire global talent with you with differently able, differently skilled people along with you, right? And this is happening. It's not that this has to happen in the future. If we are waiting for that, it will never come in. It is a recognition and an awareness and awakening that needs to come in with everybody. And I think we can still do better, but however, it's also good for us to know what we want from this and then get into it rather than doing something for the heck of doing it and then realizing, well, this is not what I want.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Sriram. Maybe let's invite Ruchira again. Your views, Ruchira, on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the future of work and keeping Gen Z in the mind.
Sure. So I think diversity, inclusion, equity, non-biased culture is now going to be as basic as having Wi-Fi in one's life. And the generation which is going to be the workforce of the future has to be absolutely bias-free in their mind. And it is not just very rightly mentioned by Sriram, it is not only gender, age, body type, sexual orientation, which part of the world you're coming from, what kind of writing abilities you have, whether you're dyslexic or you have amazing spoken English capability, which part of the world you are coming from, what is your eye type, what is your color of your skin. I think in our minds, and especially youngsters such as yours mind, those kind of barriers should be thrown away. What you should thrive is getting ideas, getting information, getting to work with various cultural dimensions. For example, Microsoft has a new autism. They have people with autism working with them because they think they can also bring to the table something which a normal individual or so-called normal individual doesn't get. At Kotak, I'll give you example. The age of a person giving idea does not matter. It is the idea which matters. It does not matter which function or what kind of education one has had. If somebody has an idea on blockchain and is actually working in operations, one can work on it, one can develop projects on it, one can really go ahead and deliver things which are important for the organization and for the function. It is important for us to identify that it is a very basic need of a thriving organization. And the organization of future is going to embrace it more and more. Maybe in India it is coming in bits and pieces, and mostly it is with, as Sriram very rightly mentioned, with the firms who have international presence. But you would see that even Indian organizations, pure play traditional Indian organizations, would have to embrace it in order to thrive in this world. Otherwise, we will lose out on the talent. I'll give you another example from Kotak. we are hiring 48-year and plus people from the services background, the army background. These are the commissioned officer or even non-commissioned officers who have taken retirement from the armed forces of the country. And we are finding them, they can work either in sales, they're amazingly disciplined people, and they are taking up operations, back office roles, heart of the office roles, sales roles, and these are, at one given point of time, we say, no, we don't want to hire older people, you know. So it's just in the mindset. The capability which lies in an individual, that needs to be harnessed. That's inclusion. So if I may ask you, how many of you know driving? Can you raise your hand? Now, I do not know driving. So I'm differently abled. You understand? So that's the difference. And that we do not identify with these nuances in our day-to-day life. Unfortunately, in work life, we bring in these elements and let it play and which is going to be at a disadvantage for the organization to thrive. So the organization for future, as I said, this is going to be as basic as a Wi-Fi, having a Wi-Fi.
Thank you, Ruchira. Interesting perspective. And, you know, while you were asking about driving, and when you said, you know, I don't know driving, so I thought I must also share, you know, with this gathering here that I have never tried Swiggy and Zomato, right? I've never done ordering through a Swiggy and Zomato, so I don't know how to do it. So that's the generational change, you know, we have. So I somehow, you know, don't feel like going to a Swiggy or a Zomato. It doesn't happen. So that's the difference which we have. So anyway, so you know, if I were to say, I think technology जो आप लोगों के साथ जो आ रही है और you know, I think that's the perspective, and technology is really bringing in things for you. I think that was lacking on our side, as Ruchira also mentioned, that हम लोग भी आप जैसे ही थे, but only minus the technology. And if technology were to, you know, say a शायरी today, you know, तो मुझे वो मजनू सुल्तानपुरी साहब की वो शायरी याद आ रही है कि अगर टेक्नोलॉजी इस शेर को बोल रही होती तो आज बोलती कि भाई मैं अकेला ही चला था जानिबे मंजिल मगर लोग साथ आते गए और कारवां बनता गया. तो टेक्नोलॉजी इतनी आती जा रही है कि एक के बाद मतलब यू नो हमारी जनरेशन के तो हम देखते ही रहते हैं कि कभी कोई एआई बोलता है, कोई एमएल बोलता है, एंड देन यू नो वी आर थिंकिंग अच्छा एआई का फुल फॉर्म क्या है भैया, ये तो बता के जाओ. सो यू नो सो दोज आर द थिंग्स व्हिच आर हैपनिंग. सो एनीवे, सो ग्रेट. Before we, you know, open the forum, I think it's already 1:15. Let me just take one last question with, you know, two of the panelists, and then we will open it. So this question goes to, you know, Saurabh. Now that we have spoken on both the sides of the table and generational Z and you know, factors and future of work. So what can leaders do to strengthen when these work cultures are, you know, constantly changing, keeping in mind, you know, the virtual, the remote, the hybrid workplaces are going to be the thing, because finally it's the output which will matter. And I think those lines which are blurring between residences and the workplaces is there. So what are your thoughts on that, Saurabh?
Sure. So the question involves a word called culture. Being in HR, I think we have abused this word a lot. We very casually have started speaking culture, wherein we don't even understand what culture, you know, we are talking about. So sometimes I ask this question to my management trainees, and these days culture, work-life balance is something which a lot of management trainees start speaking about, and they're very, very open and they understand the concept and all. But let me tell you, you know, and I'm taking a cue from the previous question where we were having a discussion on diversity and inclusion. Now again, something which is very, very much abused by the HR fraternity in terms of we speak a lot about it, but on the ground, if you see what has happened, a very little change in our policies and all has happened to be really, really fair to the concept. Now, I agree with Sriram and Ruchira that as a country, we are already very diverse. So without even making any efforts, you know, the kind of people that we are hiring till the time your distribution takes you pan-India, you are already hiring very diverse set of people. That is by design, the country is so. I mean, You really don't have to make many efforts. The problem starts after you have already hired these diverse set of people. Because now you try to train them and tell them, do things our way. This is my culture. I am supposed to do this as per my standard process. SOPs come into place. जैसे मैं करता हूँ वैसे ही आप भी करो. So पहले मैंने diversity लिया, and then I messed it up by saying जैसा मैं करता हूँ वैसा करो. So what's the point of having this diversity? That is point one. Point two, for a country like India, again, I'm sure all of you are very, very bullish on the future of the country, especially the economic growth. I am at least. And what I feel is the kind of growth that we are expecting, the trajectory that we are on, it is impossible to leave out the 50% of the population. And I'm talking about the women workforce here. It is impossible. We cannot have that kind of growth by only 50% of my population driving this kind of growth, right? So there is a lot to be tapped, especially here. Now coming to Sir's question, what is it that leaders can do in the world of digital play happening, Teams meetings happening, work from home, work-life balance? I think there is an opportunity and there is a risk here. How it will unfold, a difficult question to answer. I have my views on it, not necessarily that is how it will unfold. But what I feel is that productivity in terms of delivering goals from remote locations to some extent, that will be taken care of. It's not a matter of productivity that I'm worried about. We will be able to do that, and there are options available. I think the concern probably some of the organizations should be having, and as a HR professional, I do think about it, is how do you ensure that oneness in the team when you are actually not together? How do you ensure that we are together? So all of us believe that together we achieve more. When we work towards a common goal, that is where we achieve that goal. Concepts like these, very basic concepts. How do I ensure that people sitting in Kerala as well as people sitting in Kanpur are having those similar thoughts in their mind when they're working? I think those are the challenges that the future holds if the work models that we are currently into keep going on. I was reading one report wherein I was seeing around 30% of the workforce by 2030 will be your generation. Now, if that is the case, and I look at my children also, of course, I mean, they're much younger. If that is the case, we are kind of being self-dependent, absolutely fantastic. We know the know-how, we know the resources to use. Anything that you tell them, probably in 5 minutes, the answer is available because you have the resources. But what is missing is that human part to it. Artificial intelligence is okay. Emotional intelligence is what I'm talking about. I think that is going to be a challenge for the future leaders, and that is going to be the challenge for the organizations. How do you ensure that oneness, that common goal, common objective, driving together? That is something which is going to be a challenge according to me, sir.
Thanks, Saurabh. Really interesting thoughts. May I take this question to Vasudev, and then I think we'll open the forum. Vasudev, please.
So I think the role of the leaders, right? To me, the biggest thing the leaders can do in this journey is a couple of aspects. One, listen to your teams. Right? I think listening is a skill that is underestimated and is not utilized in the workplace and even at home sometimes, right? So I think listening to your teams, doesn't matter which generation, right? Understanding them. Because sometimes, remember when workplace thrived, the water cooler conversations were not just restricted to solving business problems. It was also about sharing personal issues. It was leaning on each other to get that strength and draw that strength from each other, right? To really carry on and achieve your dreams. And that is going to be absolutely critical. So how leaders respond to this, right? Listen to the team members, doesn't matter, from where they're working on, is going to be absolutely important. The second single most differentiation that will happen, organizations where leaders are able to help the team members learn in whatever way. It doesn't matter which model, medium of learning. Learning that is relevant for their individual growth, because there's so much of information overload, right? What is relevant to the organization and to the context of your work? What will make you successful? If I think if that can be directed and led by the leaders, rest will happen by itself. The magic will happen.
Thank you, Vasudev. Really interesting, and thank you, panelists. And with the kind permission of panelists, I would like to open the forum for questions. And I request students, guests, faculty, chair professors, everyone is invited. Any questions you would like to ask to the panel, I would request if you could introduce yourself a bit, and then if there is a specific question to a specific panelist, please request that panelist to take on that question. Else, you can put in a general question. I would try to take help of the panelist. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, sir. I'm K.K. Panda. I was a faculty here. I was the superintendent almost 6 years back. One thing as a head of the family in this generation that I have seen over the last maybe 2.5 years to 3 years post-corona. I have a daughter. She was blessed with a child. She was working for a software company. Her husband was also working for a software company. The immediate challenge came when the child was there. And they told either you come to take care of the child or we go near you. And very pleasantly surprised that the company is told you can work from anywhere. So they shifted to our house. The basic foundation that the family and taking care of his child, that has been factored into very pleasantly by the company. I'm thankful to the whole technology and all that. But the another crisis that is there is that my own study in my own colony shows that almost 12% of the couple are not thinking of having a child because there's no support system. How this important factor where the family is the base of the society is going to be factored in by the companies, because ultimately it is the society that is to be served. Whether this really is agitating in the mind of the people in the HR and the heads of the company.
So any particular panelist you have chosen, sir?
Open.
Okay. So then maybe Sriram, would you like to take this piece?
I'm sorry, I still didn't kind of get the question.
Okay. So Ruchira, maybe?
Let me attempt. So, sir, a very thoughtful question. As an individual, and not as an HR person, as an individual, I firmly believe the choice of and a definition of family and how one wants to define what family is should be left to the individual. They should decide whether they want to have a child, not have a child, at what point of their career they would want to have a child, would want to adapt or adopt or not adopt or live single. It's a very individual choice. Now, as an HR person, I would honor any of the decision that a person takes in the organization. And the person, the employee, wants a support from the organization in terms of child support, in terms of, for example, somebody wants to live with a partner, and does my medical policy include that partner or not without marriage? I think that would be more important. That's what inclusion for me would be as an HR professional. If a mother wants to stay back at home to take care of the child, or a father wants to stay home to take care of ailing parents, or vice versa, the opportunity should be available as per the policy and the process of the organization to make it happen for them, so that they are able to deliver as and when they are able to, as per the convenience of them, their extended family, as well as the organization, the deliverables of the organization. So as an HR, I would want to have that balance in all aspects of the policy.
I'll just add.
Please, Vasudev, go ahead.
One, I think you triggered a thought in my mind, right? See, the whole concept of inclusion, we typically think, young mothers taking a sabbatical, right, to take care of the child and when they try to come back, the workplace has changed. And coping up with that becomes very difficult, right? So to me, one of the things from a HR perspective would be, well, let's make it, mother or father, anyone should be able to take sabbatical to the same extent, right? We need not have paternal and maternal different policies just because of our biased thinking, saying that it is the mothers who need to take care of the child, right? So we could think of those disruptive ideas in HR, and that could really, help. Second, organizations may have limited role in terms of bringing up the child because it's an individual decision, as ma'am rightly pointed out. What organizations must do is to give equal opportunities to the parents who want to return to work, maybe after a gap. Today, a gap in the career, at least in our generations until thus far, is seen as a stigma, right? And I think that must be removed from the workplace, and that will be a great service. So you can have the best of life. You can take a 3-year sabbatical, see your child grow up, and when your child goes to kindergarten or first standard, you should be able to come back to work, provided organizations stay in touch with you, give you the tools of specific learning so that you don't miss out on stuff and things like that. That would be my 2 cents.
Yeah,
Dr.
thanks.
Tarun, sorry, if I
Go
may
ahead, go
just
Please go
add
ahead.
one anecdote, and I see a lot of young women in the audience today, and this is especially for you and the boys also, and the men also. Couple of years ago, or just about a year ago, one of my colleagues who was trying to conceive for many years, she just was getting very frustrated. And this is, I'm seeing also happening in the generation, because the couples are postponing the birth, the birth of the first child. And she was getting frustrated. There was a lot of pressure from the family. And one day she came and she was undergoing a treatment. She came and she said, I want to quit because I'm not able to cope up. So I sat her down. Her manager said, it's okay, we have to let her go. I sat her down, and there were 2 questions that I asked her. One was saying that, what if you do not conceive even then, right? What happens? Would you like to continue post that? She said yes. So I said, then why don't you take a sabbatical? Try it out and come back, so that comfort, that psychological safety that we need to provide our people so that they can have a life outside of work. And we have to, as HR professionals, we have to understand that work is not life only. That was one question. The second question was, if you leave your job today, if you want to buy a lipstick tomorrow, would you go to your husband for the money? She said yes. And I said, would you want to do that? She said, maybe not. So she took sabbatical of 6 months, she conceived, she delivered a baby, very happy to say that she's back into the groove. Taking care of family, taking care of her life, taking care of work, everything. So that's what, and it's not only HR's job, all of you are going to be managers sometime, right? In various functions. Keep the humanness in you. Please understand, and do not get your idea of right versus somebody else's idea of right. It should not be the decision-making point. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ruchira. Very well said, and thanks, Vasudev. I think that's a very nice perspective, and I think with the career options and the career aspects coming forward, I think it's a brilliant question to put in. Sir, anybody else? Any last question we can take in? Yeah, Vyas ma'am, please go ahead.
Good afternoon to all the panel members. My name is Yashi Vyas. Sir, I have one question. Like as Sriram sir mentioned, like the future of the work is going to be more about work is going to be more about project based, and the teams are increasingly diversifying as we are living in a diversifying nation. So how a organization could foster the sense of belonging and like shared purpose to the employees.
Can I respond to that, or do you want
Yes,
somebody else?
open to all.
Okay. Right. So I think I did cover that also, right? So the best way, or rather the only way to do this is you kind of don't box people in those responsibilities, right? So an organization grows when people grow, and people see value in continuing with an organization. So let me give you an example, right? So we developed one of the products that we just launched in the US. It's called the Magic Submission. Basically, it's not an OCR, just reads. It actually can read, it can identify the data, it can do a global risk analysis, and post it automatically to the underwriter, right? Now, 3 years ago or 4 years ago, that would have been like, there's no such idea at all in the radar, right? So in one of those meetings, right, we just had a group of youngsters who just were writing on a yellow stick pad, boards that we have. You have an idea, just put it there. Somebody within the team had thought about this, right? Now we got this team together and said, let's understand what are you guys trying to even say, right? We gave them the opportunity. I think Vasudev made a very important point on listening, right? I'm just trying to connect what all we have done, because none of us do something that's out of the world. It's all happening in parts, right? So we asked them. The first thing, that response that we had was, these guys started believing that, wow, this culture is, people are not just asking, they're actually serious about, the feedbacks that we give. It's not about good, bad, right, wrong, genuine interest. So we had them, then we were able to connect some of the dots. Then we had the so-called business analysts to come and have a conversation with them to kind of articulate it into better, and at least like a white paper that could come out. Over a period of 3 months, we started slowly giving them this indication. This is actually, whether we do a product or no, but this is turning out to be something that can actually disrupt a market. Now, this information was going back to them consciously, right? So when we decided to invest and build the product, they were the key engineering members for that. So they were always part of the journey. Today it's launched. It's one of the most, from an analyst standpoint, it is one of the best products that we have in the InsurTech space. And these guys are still in the organization playing leadership roles. Some of them have gone to the US. But look at the sense of pride and belonging and the message that they have taken back to their own respective communities back home, to their campuses, to their fellow colleagues, right? So that's how you groom and make it as a totally inclusive process. But it takes a lot of effort. It takes consistent awareness, and you got to be aware of how you're dealing with some of these things. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's not going to be easy also in a fast-moving world. But organizations that are willing to invest that time, because a lot of people's time is invested in this. Forget the money, the infrastructure, right? From the point of soliciting ideas to making it, giving it the right attention, to building it like a white paper. Nobody knew whether this will come out, but we said we will invest on that, right? So that's how you do. I'm just giving you one example. There are many 150 ways of doing that. But taking people along the journey is going to be very important. Of course, the rewards, how do you create wealth, timely recognition, everything comes in. But we are engaging people at an intellect level, right? And therefore, that's the excitement, that's how people see value, and that's how we grow the organization.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sriram. I think it's time, it has been indicated. So there is a small, PPT which is just summing up, I think, what most of my colleagues have shared, and maybe some points might be missing. PPT may go a little, haywire. That's the future of work we are going to look at. Human versus technology, and this race is going to go further. That's some of the points, and going forward, maybe the future of work look like this. And fewer intervention by the human people. It'll be more of a emotional management will come up. This is just an attempt to give it a different flavor to this panel. And appraisals will continue to have questions like this. कि invention ही तो किया है और किया क्या है तूने, right? So you are going to face these kind of typical HR questions, futures for work. and yeah, work-life balance is going to get disturbed. Definitely, I think that's something you'll have to look at as to how do you create that work-life balance. And too much of tech and work from home, I think will be the future. That's what the depiction we are trying to make here. And there'll be juggling of so many aspects. And yeah, the human being will look like this somewhere, juggling, wearing, maybe feeling that he is at home, but then still continuing to work. So hybrid mode of work, I think that's it. And thank you. I really thank my panelists for being there, sharing their comments and views and suggestions. And I appreciate the audience here for being patient with us and giving us the required claps, which we require now as well. Thank you.
I extend my heartfelt gratitude to all the experts for sharing their valuable insights and contributing to this enriching discussion. Now, I would like to invite my colleagues to come forward and present a memento as a token of appreciation to our esteemed panel.
Thank you so much.